Good morning and welcome to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. I'm your pharmacist, Paul White. We're glad you joined us today. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Aultman Health Systems, Studio Arts and Glass, and Genier Appraisals and Liquidations. Today, Brad and I are broadcasting from our administrative offices, and our special guest is Darrell Mays, hospital chaplain with Aultman Health Systems. Good morning, Darrell, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Hospice care is designed to help terminally ill people live out their final days in as much comfort as possible. The practical application of palliative care in most cases focuses on alleviating physical pain, but there are other elements involved. Emotional, psychological, and spiritual comfort all take on vital importance at the end of life. Faith may take precedence over everything else in these moments. No matter what hospice patients believe, the interconnected concepts of mind, body, and soul are deeply ingrained across most cultures. When faced with their own mortality, people often feel an urgent need to get their spiritual affairs in order. At its best, hospice care can allow patients to incorporate faith into their life during their final days as much or as little as they desire. This morning, we're going to talk with Darrell about his role as a hospice chaplain at Aultman Hospital. We'd like to remind our listeners our program is also available on our podcast. Just look for Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy in your favorite podcast app, and please subscribe.
So, Darrell, again, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Darrell Mays. As was shared, I am the chaplain for hospice and palliative care with Aultman. As far as like an academic background goes, I have my bachelor's in religion and my master's in divinity. And with a clinical training, I spent 7 months with West Virginia University Hospital. And then I spent almost 2 years with a clinical pastoral education program up at Summa Health System. And I didn't really start out my career as a chaplain. It actually began in the pastorate. I pastored a rural congregation in West Virginia for about 9 years. And then I transferred over into healthcare chaplaincy. And I've been doing that for about 9 years now. So currently working with Aultman, and it's kind of me in a nutshell.
Okay. I think you have a very tough job, quite frankly. I have spoken to, over the years, I'd spoken to a couple of, I think Aultman at one time, they may still have it, as a group meeting with hospice patients. And I had spoken to a couple of those years ago, and it was really quite amazing listening to these people talk. So
Sure.
When you got death at your step, it's just really amazing. But anyway, so how'd you get involved in this with Aultman in hospice care?
So it really wasn't like a straight path. Initially, my encounter with hospice was while I was in the pastorate. I had a number of parishioners who ended up going on hospice care. And so through the course of my ministry, I just would have different encounters in helping families and my parishioners with end of life experiences. And I just remember that really resonated with me. I didn't really know a whole lot about hospice prior to that. And so seeing the kind of care that was being provided for my parishioners, as far as, the nurses and just the whole team, that just really resonated with me. I thought that was very sacred work. So I think that's initially kind of how I got into hospice. And it just kind of through the course of my career, through different hospital systems and different ministries there. This opportunity opened up here with Aultman to do hospices kind of as a full-time thing. So I've been focusing more on hospice. It's been about a little over a year now. Prior to that, I was like more in the hospital setting. So just really been enjoying this care to the community.
So how does hospice chaplaincy, how does it differ from the hospital chaplain? I mean, I assume the hospital has another chaplain team.
Yes. So, I mean, there's a few ways that it differs. One is just in terms of like the setting, obviously. So hospital, when I was seeing people, it was, just straight on the floors. With hospice, the setting is I could be seeing people in their homes. I could be, we have patients who are in extended care facilities, so I could see them over there. And then we also have an inpatient setting here with our hospice program. So the settings are a bit different. And then I'd also say the duration that I see people is a bit different too. In the hospital, I could see, a patient maybe for a half hour or so, or maybe an hour, and then, maybe they'll get discharged. Whereas like hospice, I've had patients for up to 2 years. So there's a big time difference there. And then I would say that the other thing I think of when you compare like hospice and hospital, like hospital is more of a curative kind of approach. So the people that I encountered in there, the focus was on getting better. And then also the nature of, I guess you call it a traumatic event for lack of better terms. In a hospital, like that's more acute and more shocking. Whereas hospice, it's, people have had time to really process what's going on. And so I would say, that definitely adds a different flavor to the kind of care being provided. But yeah, it's off the top of my head. I think those are some of the big differences between like hospice versus hospital. Yeah.
So you covered a lot of things that you do. I mean, do you actually go to their homes? Can you visit them in their homes?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits of hospice services. I was just talking with families. There's no place like home, and for a lot of our patients, that's their desire. They want to finish out their last days in a setting that's familiar to them, where they feel comfortable. And yeah, having hospice services, we certainly allow for that opportunity, where we could provide the nurses, social workers, home health aides, spiritual care. We could do all that in the home setting. So it's just been a great benefit for the people who need that kind of care. Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe I shouldn't ask you the question. Everything associated with healthcare is either covered or supposed to be covered by insurance. Is this situation covered by health insurance, or is there a charge, or?
No, I mean,
I know people are going to ask that question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Absolutely. Because people are like, wait a second, like, is this like an extra kind of special service? No, I mean, it's all included in the package. Yeah. So,
Okay.
So yeah, whether they want chaplain support or they don't, it doesn't matter. It's all included with the service. That's a great question. I think a lot of people wonder that.
The other thing I'm curious about is people aren't going to churches like they used to go to churches, on Sundays, and
yes,
and in this situation, are people saying, no, I don't want any religious health care, or are they, I need to talk to you? Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great point. It's true. There are a lot less people involved in churches than there used to be. It used to be, I guess, maybe 40, 50 years ago, that was kind of the norm, that people had their home church and their own pastor, and they've known them for years, kind of thing. Whereas nowadays, it's more of people kind of doing their own thing, which I mean, it still works well as far as like how hospice services go, because we support people from all backgrounds, whether they're religious or not religious. So it kind of, having that service for spiritual care, I think helps out a lot, because I meet a lot of families who they shared kind of what you said. say, hey, not really a churchgoer, not really like maybe like religious per se, but but they still value spirituality, and just wanted to try to honor that. And so that's where they invite me to come in and just be a support to them, and build that relationship with them. But yeah, you're great insight there. The culture has shifted a bit as far as that goes.
Well, when I was a young person, we had huge church youth groups, and we had 200 member at the church I went to, a 200 member youth group, and now the young folks is religion of the phone. Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah,
Really, you sit in a restaurant and you see, a husband and a wife, or a girl and a boy on their phones talking to each other. And I realize that's not part of this subject, but it's just, but it just
we
is.
can make it. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, listen, it's time for our first break. Okay. You're listening to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. Welcome back to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. Friends, don't forget to stop in for your flu shot or a COVID booster. Walk-ins are welcome, or appointments can be made in our website, medshoprx.com. We look forward to helping you stay healthy.
All right, Darrell, why don't you tell us who might benefit from hospice chaplaincy services?
Yeah. So I'm a bit biased with that question, Brad, because I'd be like, everybody. Yeah. No. So we really try to pay attention to what people say when they're coming on hospice. If we have people who are talking about, I don't know why this is happening to me, why me.
Yeah.
Or they're talking about, just life is just kind of just like lost its meaning. That kind of conversation, we try to pay attention to that and say, okay, they might benefit from just having somebody come alongside and just kind of journey with them through what they're feeling. And the other thing with what I do is it's not just like for patient care, but also like for the family members, because oftentimes, even though so maybe the patient says, hey, I'm ready to go to comfort care. This is where I'm at. I just want to be comfortable. And still the family just might be like, I kind of wish that maybe you'd fight this a little bit harder. And so there might be some distress that the families have. So we try to pay attention to that too, and say, maybe the family would benefit from having some support there, just kind of help them walk through this with, their loved one. So those are some of the things that we pay attention to. And then kind of what we shared a little bit earlier about the question of, some people don't really have maybe like a church they're affiliated with, or a faith leader. We also can serve as a liaison, and we can connect them. Like I said, we support people from all faith backgrounds and traditions, religious, non-religious. And so, if somebody comes from like a Buddhist background, we may be able to connect them with a center here in the area, or, if they're practicing Muslim, maybe we connect them with the imam. So those are kind of like some of the things we keep in mind as far as people who need the services. So.
Any misconceptions that you come across?
we need a longer show, Brad. So like one of the big misconceptions is like chaplain is they equate that with like death is imminent. And so there's a lot of hesitancy to be like, well, no, I don't need a chaplain because I'm still alive and I feel good. And so there's that misconception that, once you call the chaplain in, like it's your number's up and you just have a couple minutes left. That's one of the misconceptions, and it's a pretty popular one. I encountered that one quite a bit. I would say the other misconception is that to have chaplain services that you have to be religious. and oftentimes that's connected more with like a Christian faith tradition. So we'll have people say, I'm not really religious, so I don't really think, I would use those kind of services. So that's another misconception. I think it's prevalent out there that chaplain equates, you have to be religious to have that kind of service. And I think a part of that is attached to this. The other misconception that I think of is that a chaplain is there to proselytize and maybe try to convert you to some kind of a faith. And it's actually it's quite the opposite. We're actually kind of there to help protect you from that that kind of we're there to kind of honor your spiritual beliefs and your faith traditions, and just help you use that as a source of strength. But that's a misconception I think people have, that the chaplain's going to come, he's going to try to convert you to something. And so there's some pushback, say, hey, I'm good, I don't need that. So those are probably the three most popular misconceptions that I could think of. But yeah, they're certainly there.
All right, how about some common questions you get from patients?
So the one that I get the most, this is the most common. It's basically like, why am I here? And that question comes from a lot of our patients. They're older, and the setting is basically this: most of their friends have died, the people that they shared life with. A lot of their siblings have died, and so basically it comes to this place where they're like, my goodness, they look around, they say, everybody I've shared my life with, that knows my history and my stories, like, they're all gone. And so they just ask this question, like what am I still doing here? Like, why am I still alive? Like, everybody else is gone, and here I am. So there's that relational component that kicks up that question. And then the also component that kicks up that question is, if this person has been active most of their life, maybe they were used to going out and taking care of the yard. They were into gardening, or maybe going out, spending time with friends, or visiting. And all of a sudden, because of their condition, they cannot do those things anymore. And so just having to wrestle with not having those connections anymore. I get that question a lot. It's like, I'm ready to go, and I don't know why I'm still here. If I would say that, of all the questions I get asked the most, it's probably that one, which I guess makes a lot of sense with, that population. Yeah, but that's probably number one.
Interesting. I had an aunt years ago who was really suffering. Okay. And I was visiting her, and she said, I really want to die. She said, I'm so miserable. And within a day or two, she died. Is there, I guess where I'm going here is, can they talk themselves into dying, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a really interesting, I don't know if you call it a phenomenon.
Yeah.
People are amazing with their resolve. I know of stories where there was one patient we had, and it kind of just what you share with your aunt, like, they almost willed themselves to go. This one particular story I'm recalling is, this patient had just lost their spouse of, like, it was like something like 60 years. They basically lived their whole lives together. Sure. And the patient's like, I'm good. Like, my best friend is gone, and I have, yeah. So, and that was the nature of how they went. It was, they were like doing good, like, medically speaking, I suppose, as far as they can on hospice. And it was just, yeah. But then on the flip side of it, you have people who are able to hold on maybe longer than it expected. It's the human spirit and the ability to kind of will things, it's pretty impressive in this setting. Yeah.
Well, we had a lady at the pharmacy, a lady customer many years ago, and she was riddled with cancer. And she set goals. She had a lot of grandchildren, and she set goals for, like, when Jeannie is going to graduate from high school, I want to be there. Or Bobby got something, award something, I want to be there. And this lady was consuming huge amounts of narcotics, pain relievers.
Yeah. Okay.
And every time I saw her, I thought, my gosh, this woman is amazing. That she's able to I thought she was able to talk herself to be alive.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've been a pharmacist for a long time, so over the years, I've seen many people like this that just kept going on and on and on because of maybe grandchildren, or because of pets,
Oh
or
yeah.
or whatever else. There was a lady in the hospital down here many years ago, patient of ours. Went down to visit her in the hospital. Her husband took me aside and said that she had bone cancer, and he said that the cancer has broken both of her legs.
Wow.
But her brain was brilliant. I mean, she was like, she had no, no pain, no anything. She was sharp as a tack.
Huh.
And those are the two patients over the years that we've had that I thought of being as amazing.
Oh yeah.
And it just, but the lady with the broken, both legs broken, I just stood there, and I talked to her for a long time,
Yeah.
and it was just amazing. Have you seen these like this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is, I mean, looking at the whole package, you're thinking to yourself, I don't know how they're even like still functioning. And yet,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that it's, yeah, people are just, I think they're amazing as far as what they can overcome.
Well, that was those two incidents kind of led me to be invited by the organization at Aultman to speak to a group, and there was maybe 12 or 15 people in that room. It was a long time ago, so I don't really remember, but I thought it was very enlightening listening to these people talk and laugh with each other and that sort of thing. So one of the best experiences in my life, I think.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. So I guess it's time for another break. It is the bottom of the hour. Time for the news. Thanks for joining us this morning on Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. Welcome back to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. I'm your host and pharmacist, Paul White. This morning, Brad and I are talking with Darrell Mays, hospital chaplain with Aultman Health Systems. We have a lot more to cover this morning, so let's get back to the show. I might have covered this, but what is one of the main concerns that hospice patients have? Is there one thing that rings out?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Which I think surprised me when I first got into this. But I guess it makes sense now that I've been doing a little bit. The biggest concern that I hear from patients is about their loved ones, which really surprised me. Just because I'm thinking, it's the patient's journey, and maybe they're really getting consumed with, my life's coming to an end, and maybe getting stuck on some of that. But most of the time, the concern is, I just really want my kids to be okay, and I want them to be happy, and I don't want them to be sad. And that really it shocked me. I guess in some ways I found it kind of inspiring that you hear these people, wrapping things up in their life, and their concern isn't on them; it's for others. And then also, we have a lot of pet lovers, and then the concern is for, I just want my dog to be okay. I want my dog to find a good home. That's probably the biggest concern I hear a lot from patients is I'm concerned for my loved ones, and I just want them to be okay. Yeah.
Interesting. I know people love their pets.
My goodness, yes.
They're part of their life.
Totally.
Maybe in a lot of cases, their best friend. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, and it's nothing to walk into a patient home and their dog or cat will be like right next to them on their bed. And it's just like, I mean, you're right. I mean, people's pets play huge into helping them feel calm and feel connected. It's amazing. Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking about prior to the show to ask you is, I don't know how you handle this with so many people that die, and you make friends with them,
Right. Right.
and one day they're there and the next day they're not. So how do you deal with this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We actually get that question a lot. And I mean, not just like chaplains, but everybody else on the team. It's this idea of, yeah, you deal with death constantly. And people, that's what people say. I don't know how you do it. I think what you'll find when talking with people who work in hospice, you'll find there's a common vein running through us, and it's basically like we're kind of sewn up in a way where we're comfortable with it. I really don't know how to best describe it. It's just, you find the people that do this work, they're comfortable in those settings, and they're also able to still I guess be compassionate in the care they deliver. I guess in some ways, people, they ask, like, I mean, you have to become like really like hard, you know what I mean? Like, and almost like emotionless to be able to do this kind of work. Just, and I think that's people's understanding, like, just because you do make friends with these people, you get involved with their families, and you're there with them in some of their most, heaviest times in their lives, you do get connected. And so the thought of losing all that, it is kind of, you think that may not be crushing, but at the same time, like, I guess I just kind of, so part of it is I'm sewn up that way. So I guess I just roll with it better. But at the same time, I do try to stay in touch with like the sadness that comes with losing a patient that maybe I've got connected with. So I think that's where I try to balance with, like, maybe like a self-care piece of just trying to step back and just recognize, yeah, I mean, I'm feeling a little torn up that I just lost this person. And I think paying attention to that is huge in this kind of work, just making sure that you're keeping a pulse on how you're feeling emotionally. And then I think the other thing that helps me stay engaged with this work is just the perspective I have on patients and families. I view it more as kind of as a gift of getting to be with them in those times. The people that I encounter, I think in some ways that they bless me more than I bless them, if that makes sense. Just hearing their stories, what they've been through, what they've overcome, how they're handling the end of life situation. Those things I treat as a gift, and I think that also helps me stay engaged with this kind of work. And yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been a pharmacist for over 50 years, and I've seen a lot of people, thousands of people in those years. Okay.
Yeah.
But the two cases people that I just mentioned prior are two that I still remember. I can see them standing in my store.
Yeah.
I can remember some of the things they said, and I've talked to a lot of people. I mean, it's incredible over that time, and I think about these people every once in a while.
Yeah. They stuck with you.
Well, they have, and there's a lot of other people out there that I really have enjoyed talking with, and all those things. But I still, every once in a while, I think, how would I react if I was in the same situation?
Yeah.
Compared to these two ladies,
Sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you got challenges in your profession. What are some of your challenges that really kind of?
Yeah. So I mean, like, if I'm talking like challenges specifically just for like doing spiritual care in hospice as, as a provider. And most ties back to when I was talking with Brad a little bit earlier in the show, like when he's asking about like misconceptions about chaplaincy, like one of the challenges that I encounter is like the word chaplain. I don't know if people realize this, but it invokes like all kinds of different responses depending on who you talk to. Like, some person might hear the word chaplain and maybe think of like a priest, or you might hear the word chaplain and it might kick up like a memory that they had of like of a pastor who just really just like did them wrong. So, I mean, there's all these layers, I think, that people put into just that one word chaplain. And so my challenge is trying to be in a way to where I'm sensitive to that, and I guess helping in some ways people work through that. I think Paul, what you said earlier is, in today's culture, there's been I guess a shift where maybe people aren't as grounded as much as they used to in just, attending like a certain like church per se.
Sure.
But at the same time, I hear a lot of people talk about, just, I guess in some ways feeling a little bit bitter about maybe their church experiences, and just maybe how people who they thought were maybe, solid or honest, or, whatever they say, they just feel hurt. And so here I come as a chaplain, and I'm I guess in some ways a spiritual representative. And sometimes those layers get tossed my way, and I have to roll with that. It's just kind of the nature of my occupation. I have to be aware of that, and then try to, I guess I won't say persuade, but build trust, I guess, is the best word I could use with these people. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that I face. It's just, there's a lot of layers that go into when I say chaplain.
Do you ever get this? What's this young kid chaplain know about life? I'm 80 years old, and I know a lot of stuff. Okay, but this
Oh
young
my
guy,
goodness.
this
Yes,
you got to hear that.
No, I love that you named that, because some people hate me for saying this, because they're like, because I look way younger than I do, and people are like, oh well, good for you. But at the same time, like, I'm in a field where people expect chaplain. That's another thing, they expect chaplain to be somebody who's like 70, 80 years old. So when they see this guy come who's like in his mid 40s,
Yeah.
they're like, well, wait a second, like, so that's all kinds of fun trying to navigate those waters.
Okay, sorry, I had to ask that. I just
no, like, I encountered that probably once or twice a week. So you're right there with, you're right there with me.
Okay. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah. Oh man.
We better take our last break. We're getting close here.
Okay. You're listening to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. Welcome back to Health Matters with the Medicine Center Pharmacy. I'm your pharmacist, Paul White. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's get back to the last segment of the show.
I was wondering, Darrell, what happens when you've got a patient who might have a different spiritual angle than maybe a family member?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That actually happens quite a bit. So, and like, for example, I had one patient who was like, I guess they consider themselves like agnostic, maybe atheist. But, family members were, I guess you say, they were quite religious. And so, the family, like we talked about a little bit earlier, they hear the word chaplain, like, okay, like this chaplain is going to convert our family member here, and get them to what we believe. And so in some ways I find myself having to be an advocate sometimes, where I have to protect the patient's autonomy and their own values and their own beliefs, and kind of give that its own space. And so I guess I have to risk disappointing the expectations of the family. I mean, at the same time, kind of honoring where they're coming from, but having to also share that it's the patient's journey, and it's kind of what they're connecting with and identifying with, whether they accept that or not. The nature of my role is to support the patient, kind of with what they're doing. So that, I've heard, I made that sound like that was like an easy thing to do. I mean, it's not, but trying to walk that balance of supporting family, what they're going through, and their own kind of way of handling things versus the patient who's a little bit on a different side. It's definitely has its challenges, but that's kind of how I guess it's the role I find myself in some ways as an advocate to protect the patient's autonomy, if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered that question.
Sure. So,
Yeah.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about dealing with loss of a loved one, whether it be on the patient side or the family side, because I'm sure you deal with both. And I'm going to kind of combine it with the holiday season as we all get nostalgic about different things, since we're kind of running close on time here. We got about, 6-7 minutes, but I wanted to give you ample time to talk about, how do family members who are losing a loved one deal with that versus maybe even the patient who might have regrets and they share with you things they wish they would have done. I mean, I'm sure you could talk about this for an hour
I
or
know,
more. But just some thoughts on dealing with loss and dealing with loss around the holidays, I think might be helpful for listeners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No. Yeah. And that's the thing with the holidays. The holidays are chalked so much. I mean, there's so much tradition and memory chalked into the holidays.
Yeah.
And definitely presents challenges because like with patients, for example, they miss maybe going and decorating a loved one's home. Which, I mean, it doesn't sound like a huge thing, but to them, it's been a tradition for 50 years. So that's a big loss for them. So my biggest things, I guess we have listeners who, they have family members who are going through stuff, is that I share, like, empathy is your best friend. Like if you have somebody in your life who's going through some stuff, you can't go wrong with empathizing. And I really stress that with people. And the reason I stress it is, like, if you're going through a loss, let's say it's the holidays, maybe you just lost a loved one. Like, I think the last thing you need is somebody to come alongside you and feel like they have to, like, fix you. So you just, like, hurt and feel better and get over it. Like that is like the, like, opposite direction that somebody wants to go in. I think the biggest thing that people can do is just to create that space to just listen, and not listen for the aim of trying to fix, but just being curious and hearing what somebody has to say about what's it like. Yeah, you lost your loved one, or you're right, you're not going to be able to go and decorate the Christmas tree, and just sitting with them in that, that in itself, I think, is powerful, but at the same time, it's not comfortable. I think there's a natural aversion for people to want to shy away from, I think, the pain of others, if that makes sense. Like, it's uncomfortable to be with somebody who's sad. I think you probably pick up on, as a culture, we try to candy coat sadness and try to make everything, like, really shiny and happy. So for the holiday season, I stress empathy is your best friend. Listening to what others have to share, not with the purpose of trying to fix, but just trying to listen to what they're going through. I hear a lot of times people just want to feel heard, especially when they're going through a loss. They want to share that. They want to get that off their chest. And it matters a lot for a family member or friends just be able to sit in that space with them and just let them share. I really can't stress how powerful that is. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. We're pretty tight on time, aren't we, bro? We need to go another day with you, Darrell. We do. Very, very interesting. It just, I don't know. I'm connected, I guess. Christmas, okay? We're coming up on Christmas here, and you were talking about a little bit about decorating, stuff like that.
Yeah.
How much dialogue is there with these patients now, with coming up against Christmas? I got grandchildren. Gee, maybe I not see them.
Sure.
What do you hear?
Yeah. So my experience with people around the holidays, we're rolling up on Christmas. Grandkids is actually huge. That's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I was actually with a patient earlier this week, and what they were doing is they're making sure, like, they were contacting all the grandkids and having the grandkids come over and just share, and just maybe not talk about like heavy, like, this might be last Christmas, but just making some memories. It's not unusual for families to have Christmas like early. Like, we've had families that have had like Christmas in like October, just because like it meant so much to them and to the family to be in a part of those traditions. So that's some of the things that I see people doing around the Christmas holidays, is trying to make it the best that they can, and kind of coloring outside the lines and saying, you know what, we're going to do it this way this year, and just try to honor those traditions. But I mean, you're right. Christmas, for whatever reason, it's so huge in people's lives, and it does kick up a lot of the sense of loss, not being a part of it. So I do see that a lot more, as opposed to different holidays around the year. But that's just kind of what I see with patients, is they try to, I guess, for lack of better words, color outside the lines and make it kind of their own thing. Yeah.
It's sort of like wishes can happen, huh?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Early Christmas, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. How are we doing on time, Brad?
Well, we're about out. How about Darrell? How about you list your contact info and any other final thoughts that you want to leave with the community?
Oh man, like contact info, like
well,
like like an
where they
email,
can
or
or where they can find you if they have questions about things.
No, thanks for clarifying. Like, I can give my cell phone number, you can text me,
Oh my gosh.
I
don't know about that.
So I am based my office is out of the Compassionate Care Center. That's our inpatient building for hospice. But yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, you just call the office number. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I mean, Google it or whatever. Yeah, you can get in touch with me that way. Just contact the office, and they'll connect you with me. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you to our guest, Darrell Mays, Hospice Chaplain with Aultman Health Systems. We'd like to remind our listeners, if you suspect you have a medical issue, please contact your healthcare provider. Thanks to our sponsors, Aultman Health Systems, Studio Arts and Glass, January Appraisals and Liquidations. And as always, we thank our listeners for joining us on Health Matters with the Medicine Center Farms.